Good morning, everyone. I'm Joyce Bevo with Carey Funeral Home and Cremation Care. I'm your 2021 president of the Orland Park Chamber of Commerce. Today, we welcome you to the Orland Park Mayoral Candidates Town Hall, a first for our chamber. I would like to recognize the 2021 premier members whose support and investment in the OPAC made this town hall possible. Rizza Auto Group, Edwards Realty, Nothing Bundt Cakes, Fox's Pizza, Vegan Teas, SAS Anesthetics, McAllister's Deli, Maxim, and Bonefish Grill. Now I'd like to introduce Elliot Richardson. He's the CEO, president of the Small Business Advocacy Council, who will be moderating today. Welcome, Elliot.
Thank you so much, Joyce, and thank you all for joining us. First, I want to acknowledge the Orland Park Chamber of Commerce for the incredible advocacy work that they do on behalf of the businesses in Orland Park. And thank you so much for putting on this forum. The Small Business Advocacy Council is proud to partner with the Orland Park Chamber to bring you this event. So we're planning an engaging 1 hour session here with the two candidates for Orland Park Mayor. First, we're going to hear from former Mayor Dan McLaughlin, and second, we will hear from Mayor Pacaw. The focus of this town hall is going to be on economic development and in watching, what we know will be the resilient Orland Park business community recover from this pandemic. And we know how resilient small businesses are in Orland Park and the business community in general. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. McLaughlin, one of the candidates for Mayor of Orland Park. He's going to deliver a brief opening statement, and we're going to go right into questions. Before he does, I want to say this. I had a lot of questions submitted to me beforehand. You can put questions in the Q&A, and we're going to get to as much as we possibly can in 1.5 hours. If there are questions that are left over, we will make sure that those get addressed in one way, shape, or form. So, Mr. McLaughlin, the floor or the Zoom screen is yours for an opening statement.
Thanks. Well, good morning, and thank you to the Orland Park Area Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I love Orland Park, and I spent a good part of my life working to make Orland Park a premier community. My wife jokingly says the village is our 5th child. So it's important for me to see Orland Park get back on track and to help the village prepare for the future and to reach its full potential. Everyone understands that a vibrant and growing business community is good for everyone. Our homeowners, as well as the business community, benefit because jobs are created and revenue is produced, which allows us to provide more amenities and keep our taxes down. As mayor, I saw and worked through the good times and the bad times. In the years of economic prosperity, we made solving our traffic and congestion problems a priority. I listened to the business community at events like this. Many felt that they were losing business with people avoiding Orland Park because of the congestion. By working with the state and county, we undertook hundreds of millions of dollars in road expansion and improvement projects, which helped the business community as well as our residents. Traffic congestion used to be one of our bigger problems. When we were faced with one of the worst recessions in history in 2008, 9, and 10, we met those challenges by drastically cutting spending and sitting down with the business community to work together on ideas that would give businesses a boost. From those conversations, we adopted, among other things, a local preference ordinance to give local businesses an advantage. We started the facade improvement program. And to assist the home building industry, we changed our permit process. The home builders were hit especially hard at that time. So we had breakfast meetings at the Civic Center to listen to the many home builders in Orland Park to hear their concerns and ideas. One area we learned was especially challenging. Because our permit fees, which could be as much as $20,000 on a single family home, were required up front, it caused a huge cash flow issue and limited multiple housing starts. We changed that to allow those fees to be paid at closing. A very simple solution that costs the village nothing, but helped the industry keep moving. Right now, there are more vacancies in Orland Park than any time in the last 30 years. Sure, COVID has caused some of that, but no more than the recession of 2009 and 10 did. We need a solid economic development plan that would bring in new businesses to fill those vacancies faster with good job producing users. We are at a critical time as a community and as business owners. Zoom meetings and working from home will have a dramatic effect on office space needs, not unlike how online sales and Amazon are affecting the retail industry. We need to adapt. It will be a top priority of mine to team up with the Orland Chamber and local business owners to develop a recovery and advancement blueprint for the future. We need a plan that will address the changes in our economy. We can't just react after the fact. And it must start with making Orland Park startup friendly. We can't get stuck thinking about only working with what we are used to, which is predominantly retail and restaurants. I want to encourage and incentivize startups, high-tech business incubators, and innovation districts. I believe we have some of the building blocks already in place to do just that. But we need to have a plan to encourage entrepreneurs to locate in Orland Park. A plan to attract smart young entrepreneurs and investors was already started. A walkable mixed-use city center that attracts young people was well on its way. And when I left 4 years ago, we had the next building ready to go. That project was killed and nothing has happened since. We need a plan to encourage young people that grew up in Orland to reinvest in Orland and to attract new young people with their businesses and ideas. Tim McHenry from Cooper's Hawk is a perfect example of somebody that grew up in Orland Park, had an idea, a great idea, and developed it into a national chain that started in Orland Park. A plan that offers incentives for turning vacant buildings into startup incubators and keeps costs down for those startups to develop. We need a plan to encourage investors and mentors for those startups. And we need a plan to reward those startups with support and continuous assistance. When we do that, all businesses will reap the benefits, and jobs and new income for the village will be created. Shortly before I left 4 years ago, we developed a comprehensive plan for the I-80 corridor with the property owners, and we were ready to start an aggressive plan to market this area. Sadly, nothing has happened here either. The potential for development in this area is tremendous. It has easy access to an interstate highway, and it has the advantage of being in Will County, which has a tremendous tax advantage for businesses. This area and its potential needs to be a big part of the recovery and advancement blueprint. Orland Square has always been a major economic engine for Orland Park. It too has faced challenges in the current online economy, and safety at the mall is something I hear about daily. I look forward to working with Orland Square to keep them as a viable entity in Orland Park. It is imperative that we consider incentives to help them make shopping at Orland Square an experience that is both safe and unique. We should look at removing the roof and making it an open-air shopping center like Oak Brook. We should look at some part of Orland Square as part of the startup initiative I referred to earlier. And we should look at allowing residential on the property, which would tie in with the startup concept by allowing young entrepreneurs to live within walking distance of their ventures. There are many other areas that I want to address as mayor to improve our quality of life in Orland Park that again attracts people and businesses to the community. Better pedestrian access, open lands, community events, connecting our walking and bike paths, and reinvigorating our sustainability efforts. While we are facing challenging times, I am very excited by the possibilities and look forward to getting back to work on these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. So let's start with economic development, because I have read some of the things that you've talked about in terms of economic development. It seems to be a big part of your platform and is obviously critical coming out of the pandemic. You talk about tax incentives. Can you be a little more specific about some of your plans to attract new businesses to Orland Park and to retain the businesses that you presently have here?
Well, as I just mentioned, a big part of the plan is to try and set the table to encourage startups. We have a little bit of a lock on retail. We need to reinforce that. There is the idea of incentives to be used in the right way. I mean, incentives should only be used to attract businesses that are producing jobs and potential income for the village. We've used incentives in the past, but only slightly in certain areas. But I do think that's a key economic development tool. The I-80 corridor is a great area for economic development opportunities. And like I said, it's in Will County, which gives them a big tax break already, because Will County's taxes for businesses is so much less. It's 2/3 less than Cook County taxes. So I think the comprehensive plan we developed with the owner for the I-80 corridor put us in a good position to start developing the I-80 corridor. The downtown area, referred to as the Triangle, is another area to diversify our economy by bringing in the small shops, the art shops and the ice cream parlors and the area to make it an attraction for people, because the younger people want those types of pedestrian friendly developments. They want to live near them. They want to be able to walk around and have their businesses close by. So those are the types of things I mean by setting the table. We have to make it available to encourage the young investors to come back into town. I would venture to say that current businesses that I'm worried about right now, the small mom and pop businesses, the chain stores have their support from their chains, but the small mom and pop family owned businesses are the ones I'm concerned with. And I don't know that we did enough during this pandemic to help them survive. There was a lot of money spent on things that shouldn't have been spent on. There was money spent on a frivolous lawsuit against the state. There was money spent on a concert, opening the pool, the Taste of Orland. There was all areas that could have waited a year, could have been postponed for a year and saved over $1 million. That $1 million could have been used to support small businesses. So I think right now we're in a position where we need to help support the businesses that are already here. And I think there's ways of doing that. But we need to set the table to attract new business and economic development into certain parts of Orland, like the I-80 corridor and the downtown.
Yeah, so thank you. So let's talk about the I-80 corridor. Okay, so I'd like to get your thoughts on the progress that has been made on the I-80 corridor, the progress that has not been made, but as importantly, if you are reelected as mayor, what sort of timeline would you have, and what would you do to get that project really moving?
Well, keep in mind, when I was mayor, that area was not in Orland Park. So it took years to annex the property down to and become contiguous to the I-80 corridor to put us in a position to annex that. Then to provide access to that property, to make it, again, setting the table for development there, meant us putting in access to the area with Orland Parkway, putting in the utilities, the sewer and water and electric. So all of those were steps setting the table for future development. In that time period, our original goal was to have an office complex there, almost like the I-88 corridor, office and research and development type uses. The office industry or office space became less and less desirable this far away from O'Hare Airport and downtown. So our plans changed, and that's when we sat down with the landowners to develop a new comprehensive plan for that area that we thought took it all into account, from retail to some office to some entertainment venues, kind of a mixed use, and also made it pedestrian friendly, which again is something that today's businesses want to see. So we set the table. We developed a new comprehensive plan for the area with the landowner, and we were at the stage of doing a pretty aggressive marketing campaign with the owners to market that area. That's when I left. That was 4 years ago. So I think we set the table again, and I think it's ready and ripe to be developed. I think we just got to get back to work on it.
All right, let's go to the mall because it's such a critical part of the economy for Orland Park. So you mentioned in your opening, perhaps making it an open air environment and making some changes to the mall. And my question would be, what would your process, if you were elected mayor, be to start going about that? How would you communicate with the mall and the folks who run the mall at Orland Park? What timetable would you put on to make changes, and how would you collaborate with all the stakeholders if that in fact is your vision?
Well, I will say that you've referred a couple times to timetables. My timetable is always as fast as possible. The problem is some of these major projects like LaGrange Road and the downtown, some of these areas, they just are so big, they just take a long time. But my personal timetable is as soon as possible. But I think with Orland Square, we need to do a couple things. Back a number of years ago, we felt that Orland Square was being neglected. There was a lot of areas where they seemed to be in disrepair. It just was not an attractive site at some point. We went down to Indianapolis, where Simon Development is located, and we sat with some of the top people at Simon and told them our concerns, told them how we were willing to work with them and support them and help them out, and work closely with them. They came back and invested $20 or $25 million in renovating the inside and the outside of the mall. So I think they are very easy to work with. They want to improve their venues. They want to make sure they're successful. So I think the first step is obviously going down to Indianapolis again and sitting down and saying, the market is changing, retail is changing. How are you guys planning on addressing those changes, and how can we help? We want to listen to them. We want to see what their thoughts are. But I think considering it, making it an open air shopping mall or shopping center like an Oak Brook, I think adds a new dimension to that center. It would make it more of an experience, and I think a safer environment, and just more attractive. So that would be one thing I would be asking them about and asking them to consider seriously. But that is something that, because we would like to see that happen, we would have to be willing to sit down and talk with them about some incentives to help them make that happen.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about questions about parks and green spaces in Orland Park, which some of your residents feel is a big strength of Orland Park. So how would you use those youth sports fields? There's a question about a farmer's market as well. How would you use this attractive part of Orland Park, the green spaces and whatnot, to bring people in, to have them spend money in Orland Park? Do you see tournaments on the horizon for youth sports? How can you make that into a moneymaker for the village?
Well, when you started out, you were referring to open space. So there's a couple different things here to talk about or consider. First of all, we are extremely lucky to be surrounded by Cook County Forest Preserve, huge holdings of Cook County Forest Preserve property. And the Cook County Forest Preserve puts walking and biking paths through a lot of those Forest Preserve District properties. We have about 60 parks in addition that are developed as a neighborhood or a regional park with amenities, playgrounds, baseball fields, the pool, whatever. And then there's open space. The open lands program was strictly to save open lands for the value of heritage trees and just to prevent every square inch of Orland Park from being built on. All of that adds to the quality of life in Orland. So I'm trying to address three different areas of open space. The Forest Preserve districts, we've cooperated with them in the past. We've worked with them, we've traded property, we've made greenbelt connections happen. So I feel good about working with the Forest Preserve districts to enhance that aspect of our open space. Our open lands program, I think we need to kind of get that reinvigorated and put more money into that and buy some other key properties before they're not available anymore. There's other areas of open space we already bought, like on 143rd Street, just east of Wolf Road, a great big hill and a stand of oak trees that are 150 to 200 years old. We need to protect those. That was the purpose of open lands, to protect those types of areas. And right now, I'm afraid that's being considered for use as a retention pond, which would be an absolute shame to cut down or clear cut all those 150 and 200-year oak trees. Then you got the fields you're referring to. We had a major component years ago where we were hosting a lot of tournaments. And the tournaments are good for a couple of things. They obviously give our own residents an opportunity to be part of something bigger. They bring in what I would call tourist dollars, and people coming in for tournaments, spending money at our restaurants and shopping, and even some of the hotels in the area. So there's 3 different areas of open space. All of them are critical to our quality of life and make us a very unique town because of it. But in terms of the fields, yeah, we should consider tournaments because it is a unique opportunity. But I want to make sure that we give preference to and stress our own youth leagues in Orland, our own football and baseball programs having top priority with fields. It can't be all about tournaments. It's got to be about our kids and our town first. So to give you a little idea of that, there's a lot of aspects of open space when you bring up that phrase.
Okay, I think that was a very comprehensive answer, and your forest preserves are fantastic. Let me ask you this. We have a question from somebody in the chat, and it says, we pay Comcast for top levels of internet. With all of us working and doing school at home, the internet is not strong enough. So I guess, Mr. McLaughlin, have you heard about issues with Comcast? And if you are elected mayor, how would you address them?
I have heard some issues, and there's certain, we had some of those going back when I was still mayor, that we were constantly fighting for certain areas of Orland Park that weren't being serviced almost at all, because they were outlying areas that Comcast made the argument that it was too hard to get to some of these areas, or the cost to get service to some of these areas didn't make sense for them. I don't know. I just heard different arguments about why certain areas were having poor service or no service. So in today's time, especially with people working from home and all the Zoom meetings, and it looks like this is something that's going to be with us for a long time and expand, I think we need to make our service to our residents and businesses a priority. But until we can sit down and talk with Comcast and some of the other providers, I don't have a specific plan on how to make that happen.
Okay, let me ask you this. We're gonna turn to the pandemic right now, and these were some questions that were submitted. Mr. McLaughlin, do you approve or disapprove of a mask mandate in Orland Park?
Yeah, I think there should be a mask mandate, and I also don't know why that's a big problem. I hear the arguments. But every store I go to in Orland Park, it sure seems to me like most everybody's gotten used to the idea of wearing a mask. The businesses require the masks, but we can't keep ignoring the CCD and the state requirements and the experts. The masks make a difference. So I think the mandate is something that we would have to do at least until the vaccines get out and we get into a different position.
How do you feel about the mitigations that the governor has put in place? So the restrictions on restaurants and retail, do you think that those were appropriate? Do you think that they should have been tweaked? What are your overall general thoughts?
Well, I always think things could be tweaked.
Okay, fair enough.
I would say that, again, going back to the recommendations of the experts, the scientists, the doctors, we needed to put some strict restrictions in place to try and prevent the spread of this disease. It seems to me that there was a lot of areas that conflicted. But it also seemed to me that there wasn't any major sit downs that I had read about or heard about where brainstorming sessions were taking place to try and discuss how do we make this as equitable as possible, as safe as possible. I think more discussions needed to take place on some of those, because there were definitely some areas that seemed to be inconsistent. But again, I still believe that the experts and the doctors that were making recommendations need to be listened to.
Thank you. The Mayor Bacaw will be joining us at 9:34, so we have about 9 minutes left. There was a lawsuit that was filed by the village against the state, which was later dropped over the summer. My question is, please tell me about your feelings regarding that lawsuit, and if you feel that relations are strained between the Village of Orland Park and state officials right now, what would you do to try to improve those? Two-part question.
Well, I'm a big believer in there's almost nothing you can't solve by sitting down and talking. I do believe the $80,000 that was spent on a lawsuit was a political stunt to gain publicity. It didn't gain Orland Park one thing. It didn't help Orland Park at all. Suing the state is, in my opinion, just a waste of time. But the $80,000 that was used for that, along with the going against the state's recommendations on holding outdoor events, meant there was $120,000 wasted on holding that concert. There was $200,000 wasted holding the Taste of Orland. My understanding is $800,000 or $900,000 lost by opening the pool, and it was one of the only pools open in the area that I have been able to determine. I know of at least 8 or 9 other water parks and pools in surrounding communities that were not open for the summer. So when you add that up, you're talking about $1 million or more that could have been used to help support the small businesses that are struggling.
And how would you have used that money to help the small businesses that are struggling?
I think there was certainly a good reason to consider low interest loans in some areas, no interest loans and short-term loans in some areas, loans to help businesses, especially restaurants, construct or build outdoor eating areas to spread out their customers, provide more of the protective equipment and supplies. But in general, I think we could have sat down with those mom and pop and family owned businesses and worked out individual programs to help each and every one of them. I don't want to say I want to ignore the big chains, but the big chains have a huge support system through their chains. So I would have concentrated on the mom and pop and family owned businesses in Orland. And I think $1 million would have gone a long way to help them.
All right. And if elected mayor, would you consider grant programs for small businesses, low interest loans right now? I mean, what are some of these things that you have in your tool belt that you feel would be able to be used to help businesses recover from the pandemic?
Well, basically what you said. I mean, there's still the opportunity to have low interest loans, and in some cases, short-term no interest loans. We started some programs. I had a program back a number of years ago, the Mayor's Retention Expansion Program, where small businesses were able to get incentives to help expand their businesses if they could show that they were adding employees or services that would provide more income for the village. I mean, each and every business is different. I've been in business and I've worked as the executive director of 2 major trade associations where I was constantly dealing with businesses at different levels. And every business has its own little quirks, its own little needs. And I think sitting down individually and listening to the businesses is something that would go a long way towards developing and coming up with programs to help each and every one of them.
So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to close. So in terms of deficit reduction, how do you feel about what the present administration has done to reduce deficits? And, where do you see the deficits going if you're elected mayor? Not the most articulate question, but I think you get my point.
Well, deficit spending means you're creating debt of some kind. When I was mayor, we had 24 years of balanced budgets. by all appearances, this budget is not balanced this year. It's only balanced in terms of taking money from the reserve fund and the recreation fund to balance the budget. So there was a kind of a last minute quick reduction of the tax levy by a small amount, I think $150,000. Obviously, that is a political move to look good at election time. $150,000 reduction in the tax levy probably means $10 or $11 per household. Again, that's more money that could have gone into solving some of the problems our local businesses are having right now.
Right.
But running a balanced budget is critical to a municipality.
Awesome.
There's an issue that has been raised, and it's raised in every community. Debt is always a question, or debt is always an issue that is maybe not fully understood by everyone, because there's bad debt and there's good debt. As a matter of fact, Alexander Hamilton created our financial system on planned debt. If you can use debt to provide services and amenities for the community, and you can manage the debt service, the mortgage payments in your budget, then that is planned debt. That's good debt. It got us a new police station. It got us a new library. It got us new sportsplex, road work. So, I mean, there's ways of using money, but balancing our budget. The money coming in has to be the same as the money that's spent.
All right, Mayor McLaughlin, you've got 2 minutes to answer how you would strengthen the relationship between the village and the chamber, and then, say anything you'd like to in closing. So go ahead.
Well, in strengthening my relationship with the chamber, for 24 years, I always thought I had a great relationship with the chamber. I've owned a couple of businesses myself. I've worked as the executive director of 2 trade associations where I dealt with businesses and assisted businesses for almost 30 years. So I certainly think I can relate to the businesses in the chamber, and I have ideas of how the chamber can improve, as well as how the chamber can help us improve. I mentioned in my earlier statement, there's some areas I definitely want to work with the chamber and business owners to develop this major comprehensive economic development plan for the future. So I don't feel I'll have any problems working with the chamber. I do want to real quick take advantage of my last minute or so to say I'm running a great slate of people. I'm very proud to be running with the 4 people I'm running with, and I just want to real quick introduce Pat O'Sullivan, who's been on the School District 230 board for a number of years, and as president, he's a local business guy. Amy Burrell is a researcher at Northwestern University, and I've never seen anybody. She might have more energy than I do and a lot of ideas. So I'm very happy to have her on the slate. Chris Casimir is a union carpenter who serves on a lot of funds, so he brings that experience to us. And he's also the president of the School District 135 PFE. So he's been very involved in the community for years. Derek Rinaldi, another local business person who's also a Cub Scout den leader and an OYA wrestling coach. So again, we've got a slate of people that are very involved in the community, very dedicated and very hardworking, and a lot of ideas. So I'm looking forward to working with that slate to make Orland Park better. But I want to say we understand that in order to keep Orland Park growing and thriving, we must change how we do business. We must develop an economic development plan that restores our standing within the commercial and retail industries, and a plan that attracts current and future generations and ideas to Orland Park to produce a well-rounded local economy. This is not the time to sit back and watch Orland Park fall behind. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk with you today.
It's been a pleasure, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, take care. Okay, Mayor Pacaw, please feel free to turn on your camera. Welcome, welcome, Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elliot. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So what I'd like to do first, Mayor, is ask whether or not you'd like to give any sort of prepared statement. We have 1/2 hour, so we'll go until about 10:04, okay?
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to start off with some opening comments. I'd like to thank you and the Chamber for hosting this event. It was 4 years ago when the SBAC hosted a face-to-face town hall and my opponent didn't show up. And since that time, it was my pleasure to introduce both the Chamber and the SBAC. And I'm happy that you've formed such a strong relationship and you're now working together. as most of you know, I grew up here in Orland Park, and I went on to earn my bachelor's in aerospace engineering, almost a decade of flying F-15Es in the Air Force, and an MBA from Duke. Then I moved back to Orland after being gone for about 15 years and raised my family here. I coached baseball and basketball for many years. And while my career started as a consultant, and then I opened up and grew groundskeeper landscape care, which I sold in 2019. I am also the founding partner in Fahrenheit Consulting, which was founded in 2009. You are all aware that this is my first term as mayor, which I started in 2017 after I won my first ever attempt to run for public office. I'm looking forward to answering your questions. And also I'd like to quickly mention my slate mates on People Over Politics, Gus Lekas for clerk, as well as Sean Compass, Brian Reardon, and Joni Radishevsky for trustee. They're great people, and I hope you support them as well.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Let me start with this. Talk about what you feel have been your major accomplishments in your first term as the mayor of Orland Park.
Well, I think you go back to what I said I would run on to begin with. What I said that I would run on was government transparency and good government. So I lowered the pay back to $40,000. I made the job back to part-time. I refused the pension, and we also eliminated pensions for elected officials. We had term limits passed, as we said we would. It passed 89 to 11. Fiscal responsibility was something that I ran on as well. And what we've done there is just amazing. What we walked into, I was unaware when I ran, but I found out when I got here that we were about to start spending our reserves when I got here. So we needed to take some drastic actions quickly in the good times instead of waiting for things to get bad so that we were prepared. So what we did is we reduced operating expenditures by 14%. We reduced the size of government. We reduced our FTEs by 9.5%. And we reduced debt by a little over $40 million in the first 3 years. Thankfully, we did that because when COVID hit, we didn't have to react. We didn't have to just cut everything like some people do. Oh, it's a recession, we have to cut everything. Didn't have to do that. Instead, I sat down with the village manager and said, hey, let's use this opportunity to press our advantage. We're in a stronger fiscal position than anyone else. So let's continue to recruit businesses. Let's continue to do our business. Sure, we'll cut things that make sense, but overall, let's keep doing business, try and keep life as normal as possible for people. We were able to do that because of the fiscal decisions we made the previous 3 years. Then if you look at economic development, we were throwing a big curveball in 2018, February of 2018, just 8 months after I took office, when we had Sears, Carson's Home Goods, Toys R Us, and Babies R Us all announced that they were going to shut down. Some of them shut down immediately, and some of them it took a few months, but they were going to do that, and we had to really focus on getting replacements for that. Fortunately, I had rebuilt the relationship with Simon, which had been fractured. It's the first thing I did. They're 10% of our tax base directly and over 40% probably indirectly. So it was very important to establish a relationship. So we already knew that some of this was coming and we had plans in place. So we were able to fill anchors. And I realize that AMC hasn't started the exterior construction yet, but they have done work on the interior. And obviously with COVID, things got put on hold. But that was in place. And fortunately it was, because that's what allowed us to move forward during that time and also keep the mall strong. And then, on our community, I ran on making our community livable. What I found out when I got here is that 40% of our roads were in poor condition or very poor condition. And we were only fixing one park every 2 years out of 66 parks. It would take 130 years to get through all those parks. Well, that was for 2 years, I was stymied on getting anything done. With the new board, we were able to advance our road program by 5 years in just the last 18 months. And last year, we were able to renovate John Humphrey, fix 7 parks, 10 basketball courts, 8 tennis courts, and 7 new pavilions. So we were able to do all of that. Additionally, I said we'd introduce the Centennial Park West concert series, which we did. That Centennial Park West was built to host concerts. We spent $3 or $4 million building it, and then we don't do concerts there. So it was pretty important to start utilizing that asset. So those are some of the major things. And I think we've done a fantastic job of getting the village through COVID in still a very strong position, as evidenced by some of the businesses that are still coming here.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think I'm an hour off. I said we would be going until 10:04. That would be an awful long time. We'll be ending at 9:04. So my apologies for that. Okay, so economic development moving forward. businesses are coming out of just a devastating pandemic, right? So as the spring recovery, which we hope occurs, and the summer recovery happens, what will you be doing to incentivize small businesses in Orland Park to grow and to stay?
So we've already done a lot of things to incentivize small businesses. So first, we helped our businesses during COVID when we had our 90-day sales tax sharing. So we did a 3-month sales tax sharing when they opened back up, and those were for businesses that fell into the small business category because those were the ones most impacted. So if they were a small business, that happened. Additionally, we already have several incentives that we've put in place. So we put in place an incentive to attract hotels because we need to diversify, and that the hotel industry has been hit hard and we don't have a lot of them. So we have a sharing program for that over 10 years. We have a backfill restaurant program. So any of our empty restaurant spaces, if a restaurant comes in, 10 years, 50% tax sharing. And again, these are performance-based. So nothing from nothing is nothing. So having something in there and getting half is a good thing. Also, we have incentives for the I-80 corridor for bringing in technology and manufacture and light manufacturing companies. We also have the Build Orland program that's already in place, which allows 25% discount on all of the permitting fees. And also, it doesn't have to be paid until the building is occupied. So again, to help our builders. So those plans are already in place. And then obviously, we still consider incentives on a case-by-case basis, as we did with Caputo's and Peach Fresh Market, who are coming here. And then we also support Cook County incentives, and we've done so with REI, and so they're coming as well. So those are just some examples. And so we're already well on top of this and making sure that businesses are still coming to Orland Park.
Mayor Pacau, you just mentioned the I-80 corridor, and we had questions about that. So can you talk about the progress of the I-80 corridor, a timeline for development, and where you see that going if you're reelected mayor?
So first, I think for the I-80 corridor, it's important to have the history of the I-80 corridor.
Okay.
So that the history of the I-80 corridor. So if we go back to 2005, probably the biggest economic development mistake in the history of Orland Park was to allow Andrew Corporation to leave. And I've had conversations with them, and they wanted to go to the I-80 corridor, and Orland Park didn't want them there. And so they left. And that took 950 jobs. It took corporate headquarters. It took a manufacturing facility, Fortune 1000 company. Fortune, as you know, Elliot, Fortune 1000 companies do not grow on trees. And losing those kind of jobs and those kind of high-end jobs, my opponent at the time said that they were great corporate citizens, but we won't really miss them because they don't provide sales tax, and the property taxes from the residential that will replace them will be much greater. That misses the point of economic development. Those jobs, they're the daytime traffic that allows restaurants to open. Those jobs keep our higher end homes occupied and keeps that market strong, keeps our home market strong. This was an international corporation. So that was a huge loss, and putting them in the I-80 corridor would have made a big difference. Then in 2009 was the last time we had anything go in there. And that was the ATP building. So from 2009 to 2017, there was really nothing, and there was no activity whatsoever. So the first thing I did was, of course, to get a deal done, you have to deal with the owners of the properties. And the owner of the property had a fractured relationship with the previous administration. So I sat down with him and we talked about, what their goals were, what they were trying to do, and what the village's goals were, because you have to be a partner with, and we have one owner for all those properties. So it's not like we can choose one owner that's cooperative and the other's not. It's one owner for all those properties. The other thing I realized is that that's a regional issue. So it involves, and it's in Will County, and that corridor extends beyond just Orland Park. It includes Mokina, it includes Tinley Park, and obviously the Will County Center of Economic Development is also critical to this because they drive business here. So I met with all of them, and we decided to create the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance, which is a partnership between Mokina and Tinley and Orland Park and the Will County CED. And we all agree that warehouse and trucking is not the answer there. We don't want a lot of trucks, and Will County already has a lot of places for that. It is the last corridor in Will County that's available for tech, for biotech, medical, those types of uses. So if you think of the businesses that are already there, Panduit, very technologically focused. Ozinga, believe it or not, you think concrete, but very technologically focused. They're in Mokina, Panduit's in Tinley. We have Horton Insurance, a business service. We have ATP there as well for Orland Park. So we've all agreed to work together, and we have been. COVID obviously put us a year backslide on that, but we actually have a brokers breakfast coming up next month, where we're going to bring brokers in to introduce the corridor. Many of the people in the chamber have already seen our marketing videos that we do for the corridor. And the other thing we did is we developed a relationship with Intersect Illinois. So what I did when Amazon came out, I didn't get any support from staff. They're all holdovers. They didn't help. I did it myself. Put in for Amazon. I was told I was crazy. Well, we got to the next round in Illinois. It also put I-80 corridor on the map. We got to the final round with the USDA, with the government. So we're getting opportunities. As you know, these opportunities, you keep going to the plate and eventually you hit a home run. It just takes time. And so we continue to get opportunities. We weren't getting those opportunities before. Now we are. Obviously in COVID, no one's doing any of that. So for a year, it's been kind of quiet, but we expect that to pick back up relatively shortly.
All right, thank you. So let's talk about the mall. We heard Mr. McLaughlin talk about his vision for what the mall might or might not be coming out of COVID. Obviously, a key economic engine for Orland Park. What's your vision for ensuring that the mall remains vibrant coming out of COVID?
So I know what his vision is, because my first, as anyone remembers, when I ran, I said the first thing we have to do is protect our mall. It's 10% of our tax base directly, 40% indirectly. So I went down, so I met with Simon. They came here, they brought many senior executives, and we met and discussed what was going on at the mall. I found out that 6 years before I got here, so 10 years ago, Mayor McLaughlin went down there and told them that he wanted them to make it into a town square or town type of mall. And they pretty much, without saying so, they laughed him out of the room. They have a top 1% traffic in the country to this mall, top 10% sales at this mall. Why in the world would a private entity ever look to demolish that to build residential and some retail? And it would kill Orland Park. You think if you did that right now, you'd have 4 years of nothing. Nothing's ever going to get built there again. We'd lose all the businesses surrounding it in that time. So what I did is I sat down and talked with them and said, hey, what are we looking to do? So they're the ones that tipped me off to, it's likely that Sears is going away. It's likely that Carson's is going away. So we started developing a plan right away. And that's why we were able to get AMC. When Sears announced they were leaving, we approved AMC that month. That AMC was critical to getting Von Mauer. Carson's left in September. In October, we had Von Mauer, and a year later, Von Mauer was built. That's a $45 million investment. Between Von Mauer and the mall, they've put almost $100 million into that mall in the last 10 years. And they're looking to make it vibrant. Macy's has agreed to do some external work to improve their look, because again, Von Mauer puts pressure on them. So we're in constant discussions with the mall about how to redevelop it. I'm in constant discussions with Seritage at AMC, or Seritage, who owns the Sears, who's redeveloping the AMC. The mall was also going to put a park outside to kind of soften the back. Of course, COVID hit, and that put a stop to that as well. So we'll have to see what it shakes out. The malls, it's been tough, but as they said, Orland Square will be one of the surviving malls, and it will make it stronger. But we just have to see how it shakes out over COVID. But we're in regular discussions. In fact, I talked to the regional director yesterday.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Do you think there's safety concerns at the mall? We received that question, and if so, do you think they need to be addressed, or how would you address them?
So residents, since I've been here, have said there's safety concerns at the mall. I've seen the data. For 4 years, I've been showing the data. We have the safest mall in the Chicagoland region. It's safer than Oak Brook. It's safer than Woodfield. The stats bear that out. Perception is really hard to change. If people have a perception, and social media is a lot of that. People have a perception at the mall. It's really hard to change that. All I can do is continue to give them the facts. But when you look at the mall, we have a constant presence. It's probably the safest place to be in Orland Park, because anything that happens in there, we're there within 30 seconds to a minute, because we have a constant presence. We have 24/7 access to their security, room, to their cameras. They've installed a new camera system. And we're working with them diligently all the time on changing their policies and working together. And I think if people have been to the mall recently, they'll see that we've done that. And they've increased their, they've been keeping youth, if they're in groups greater than 3, they've been expelling them. So they've been much more aggressive in that. And that's because we constantly work with them and constantly talk with them. And again, I had that conversation yesterday again with that. So I think from a perception issue, people need to go there. They need to experience. What you can't do is allow your perception to make your judgment. You need to go there, and you need to go there yourself and see that the mall. I've been there several times, and you'll see we have a very big presence there, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, we have certainly had some wonderful events at the mall. Let me ask you about this question about parks and green spaces. How are you going to use your parks, your green spaces, your forest preserves, these wonderful attributes that you have in Orland Park to attract revenue, and to make the village stronger? I guess I would say, what did you do to do that as mayor, and what will you do in the future?
So what I've done so far is, anyone who's seen our marketing videos knows that we're really, that's one of our biggest strengths. I mean, we have 650 acres of parks, 250 acres of open space, and we're either inside Orland Park or next to Orland Park. You have 15,000 acres of forest preserve. So we've been using that asset from the beginning. I used it a lot with Amazon to help attract. We've used it with USDA. We're going to use it with other businesses to continue to try and attract them here. One of the biggest problems with our parks, though, is that we built our parks, but we had no plan on how we're going to repair them or the capital we were going to use to repair them. And while we were basically, driving up debt for the Triangle, we didn't do anything to fix our parks. And you look at John Humphrey Complex, it was pretty much unusable for its original intent, which was baseball. So we've basically redeveloped that entire complex because it was built in the mid '80s. And so it needed to be redone. We've gone out for a master plan for an RFP for our other two major parks, Schuessler Park and Centennial Park. And we're going to get that master plan done. And then over time, we will redevelop those areas as well. It's very important that we keep our parks maintained. And as I said earlier, we were fixing one park every 2 years. That's not going to work when you have 66 parks, 132 years to get through them all. So we had to change how we do things. And we changed that. We doubled the money we were putting into it, but we also started fixing things that needed repair as opposed to just changing one whole park, even though things were in good shape. So that's why we were able to get to 7 parks. We were able to get to 10 basketball courts, 8 tennis courts, and we'll continue to do that because it is one of our strengths, but you have to maintain it. If you let it go bad like it had been, then it's not going to be a strength anymore.
Okay. Another question about economic development. I mean, that is one of the primary reasons we're here, and it's the Triangle Project. The question that was submitted is, does Orland Park want or need to be a center hub for offices and entertainment in the Triangle Project? And what's your vision for that project?
So obviously the Triangle is something I inherited. It had been going on for almost 20 years before I got here. 20 years, and we're about $50 million in the hole because we decided as a village to play developer. What happened, we as a resident, I heard time and again, we're going to have this walkable, quaint downtown. It's going to look like Frankfurt. Then we spent $64 million of our money to build a publicly funded housing project. That was the first thing that went in there. Then we brought in University of Chicago, and University of Chicago being in Orland Park is a great thing. What I found out since being mayor is that we undercut 2 other landowners that they were also looking at. They were coming to Orland Park. We undercut them. And anyone that knows anything about a TIF district, the last thing you want in a TIF district is a non-for-profit that provides you no increment, which is exactly what happened. So there's no property tax coming from them. But now we have these huge buildings right along 143rd. So the question now is, what do you do with it? Because it's not going to look like the quaint walkable downtown of Frankfurt. That was pretty much shot before I ever got here. So what I pushed for was to get out to the marketplace and let's get ideas from developers. I'm not an architect. I'm not a developer. And I have some things that I'd like to see, but at the end of the day, I want to see what the developers come back with. And we finally did that. And so we had 2 people that we moved forward with. One we were just about to sign an agreement with when COVID hit. And then they come about September, they backed out. And now we're in negotiations with one of the Chamber's own, Edwards Realty. And I think there'll be some good news forthcoming. I think Edwards would tell you what I've told both of those developers. I said, first and foremost, this development needs to be something that benefits all of Orland Park. It can't just benefit the people that now have residences in that area. So it has to benefit all of Orland Park. And what would benefit Orland Park? We already have an office user that will go in there. So we need office space down there. We need some restaurants down there. And we'll probably have some walkable. It will be walkable, but it's going to look urban. And that's that's what it's going to look like when it's done. I don't know exactly what it will look like because it's going to depend a little bit on what businesses want to come there, because that obviously changes the plan as they go. But I think people will be excited when when we make this announcement and we see Edward's plans. They'll be excited, and they will continue to develop over time because it will take 4 to 5 years to fully redevelop that site.
Okay, Mayor, do you approve or disapprove of a mask mandate we're moving to the pandemic right now?
So I do not approve of a mask mandate, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So first off, we have a statewide mask mandate. So there's no reason to have a local mandate. We have a statewide mask mandate. But in that statewide mask mandate, what people don't realize is the governor has asked our law enforcement to enforce that, which means if someone's in your business not wearing a mask, the business owner is arrested and can face up to a year in jail and a $2,500 fine. We will not do that. I wouldn't do that just morally, but also legally. The governor cannot compel any local government agencies to enforce his orders. The only enforcement mechanism for his orders by law are the state police and his agencies. It is not local. He absolutely cannot do it. It's against the law. Regarding the village, the ordinance that came forward with the village, again, it's a $1,000 fine. Babies, people who have COPD, who can't wear a mask, asthma, COPD, something like that. There were no exceptions for anything. And our police would have to ticket people and arrest people for not wearing masks. I'm not going to put our police in that position. And what I believe it's about informing the public and educating the public. And I think we've done a phenomenal job of doing that in Orland Park since the very beginning. And I haven't been in a store, a restaurant that doesn't require masking. Now they have the right to ask for masking. And if you don't, then that's trespassing if you won't put it on and you won't leave. That we will enforce. We haven't had any of those calls or any of those complaints because people in Orland Park and the visitors to Orland Park have been complying. Why should we put an ordinance in place to arrest people and fine people for a problem we don't have?
How do you feel about the mitigation measures that the governor has put in place throughout this pandemic? Do you think they've been appropriate? Do you think they should have been changed? Give us your thoughts on that, Mayor.
I think the governor has failed us with his mitigation measures. He's changed the targets regularly. They haven't been fact-based. And I'll start at the beginning. At the beginning, we shut everything down. Okay, I didn't agree with it, but I can understand it because we didn't have a lot of information. But when you tell people stay inside, and at the time they were saying don't go out to the parks, close your parks. Well, he was wrong on that. We kept our parks open. As we found out, he was wrong on that. He left Costco and Target and Walmart open, but he shut down every small little retail store. So 3,000 people in Costco were okay, but 5 people in Mirabali Shoes or in the clock store or in Orland Park, those weren't okay. That makes absolutely no sense to me. We shut down golf courses so we can have hundreds of people in Costco in which is a few acres. And we have 160 acres on a golf course and we couldn't have anyone on them. And then when we opened it up, we could only have 32 on them. I mean, those types of things made no sense. You could drive to a boat ramp with your whole family, but only 2 of you could get on a boat. So those things made absolutely no sense. We pushed back and we did so via letters with multiple mayors signing it. And eventually those things were changed. And so all along, asked the governor to make these changes. When it came to an opening plan, we put together an opening plan here in Orland Park. We worked with many people. We worked with the Chamber. The Chamber of Commerce was part of that team, as were other members of the Chamber. And we presented an opening plan to the governor 2 weeks before the state put one out. Why did we do that? Because when we sent it to him, it was 3 days before we were supposed to open. We didn't know he was going to extend it another month. So the governor's been behind on this from the beginning. And then when we get to closing restaurants again, he said he was using facts. There's been only one restaurant outbreak or bar outbreak in Cook County, suburban Cook County or Will County since June. And yet we shut down restaurants again. That made no sense. They were operating at a limited capacity. I'm not saying we shouldn't do things differently. We clearly have, even in the village. We hosted a concert where they were 8-foot squares, 6 feet apart. We've done things very differently in the village, but that's what we should be doing. And businesses were already doing that because they have to make their customers feel comfortable. You know that, Elliot, for their customers to come. If a restaurant just opens up and seats every table, people probably aren't going in there right now. So we needed to have common sense mitigation measures, not these drastic draconian ones that we put in that have really just destroyed many of our businesses.
So let's talk about small businesses. We've only got 4 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you a question to give you a chance to close. Okay. Are you in favor moving forward of trying to provide small businesses in Orland Park, small businesses, with grants, with low interest loans, with a series of tools that will help them to recover from the pandemic? And, what are some of your thoughts on that?
So small businesses, we've already done that with our sales tax sharing. As far as interest-free loans, so we have PPP loans, and then we have a second round of PPP loans. We have state grants and we have county grants. The reality is the village doesn't have the money we have 3,000 businesses. How do we pick the winners and losers and suddenly become a bank? We don't have the infrastructure to do all of that. What the most important thing for us to do is to fight to keep businesses open, which is what I've done throughout this pandemic. So that helps. And to continue to fight for our small businesses, that's what we can do. And we create an environment where people want to come to Orland Park and they want to partake in those businesses, because we just don't have, one, we don't have the capital, and two, we certainly don't have the infrastructure to vet loans and all that. And at the end of the day, if someone can't get a PPP loan or a second round PPP loan or a county grant or a state grant, and then they're coming to us, they're probably someone that, isn't going to be able to pay it back. And ultimately, I think we're better off doing everything we can to keep businesses open, do the sales tax sharing that we have. We also, all of our restaurants, because they've been most hit, we waive their liquor license fees. So we've done that where we can for businesses. And I think that's the most important thing we can do.
Okay, so Mayor, my final question, you can take this right into a close for about 2 minutes, okay, is what are your suggestions to strengthen the village's relationship with the chamber? And then anything you'd like to say, in closing, Mayor.
Well, as you know, I've had a good relationship with the chamber and with the SBAC, and I've worked very hard to work with the chamber to help them help businesses. But one of the things I obviously did is I joined the SBAC in the chamber, and so that you guys are working together, because there's strength in those numbers. I've worked with I would like to see the chamber be more active in advocating, as you know, and advocating for small businesses on the political front, which Elliot, you do. So that partnership helps a lot. So I think those are the really critical things, because there's a lot of things coming out of Springfield that are tough on small business, as you know. So that's where I always have an open door. If you want me to push on Springfield, we certainly will. And we'll let the IML know, and we'll let other mayors know, because believe it or not, mayors on both sides of the aisle, we agree on most of these issues because they're not partisan. We want our towns to do well.
All right. So your time to close here, Mayor.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you very much for having this. Again, I want to point out that, this is the first time that I've ever been in office, and I've been here for just 4 short years. The first 2 of which I had all of my opponents' people in place, and frankly, they tried to block everything that I did. I mean, again, the Amazon bid I had to do by myself. Half of the remaining 2 years have been filled with COVID. So we've faced a lot in these 4 years. But in spite of that, you've already heard, 90% of my agenda is either done or started being done. I've already kind of reviewed what I ran on 4 years ago, refusing the pension, lowering the pay, term limits, fiscal responsibility, what we've done. And when prior to me getting here, the debt had gone up $99 million over 18 years. That's a $5.5 million deficit every year. And it primarily went to the triangle. And as I found out, about $100 million worth of property purchases over the last 15 years of my predecessor's tenure. So what we've done is we reduced the debt in total by 37 million, because that's put us in a position where we can actually fund our capital programs. We can actually use some of this available debt because we borrow at 2%. So, and then, on an economic development basis, we've done a great job of shoring up the mall. You think about other places that have lost these kinds of anchors, and we were able to fill them, fill those anchors, and we're able to get investment. We've had Duluth Trading come in, REI's coming in, Pete's Fresh Market, Stan's Donuts. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've had over 500 businesses in the last 4 years that have opened. The triangle was a disaster when I got here, and as we've talked about, we're very close to having an agreement with Edwards Realty. I'm very hopeful that we'll get that done in the next month or so. And unfortunately, COVID has, like a lot of things, pushed it back a year. But we're in a great position coming out of COVID. We already have incentives. We already have businesses coming in. We have 2 medical offices looking to come in. Silver Cross is opening 2 facilities on 143rd Street. Those are already under construction. And so we've done a lot. We've done a lot for the community, making the community livable. We want to continue on Centennial Park, on Schuschler Park, and all of our other parks. I won't be here for 24 years. I've term limited myself, and I won't tell you that I need more time to finish things after 24 years. I've had 4 years. And
Thank you.
all I'm asking for is 4 more years to finish the good work that we've started. Thank you very much for the time today.
Mayor, thank you so much for the discussion. I know we didn't hit every question, and I know there's questions in the Q&A that we didn't have the opportunity to get to. Please feel free to send those to the Chamber of Commerce. We will get those to Mr. McLaughlin and Mayor Pacaw. And I want to thank you both. I know Mr. McLaughlin's not on the screen right now, for a really, really engaging conversation about critical issues on economic development and other things coming out of this pandemic. Joyce, anything to add?
First, I'd like to thank you, Elliot, for moderating today. I appreciate that. Also, thank you, Mayor Keith Pico and former Mayor Dan McLaughlin, for coming today and joining us in our monthly membership meeting and keeping us all of our members informed. I would like to welcome everybody else who has joined us. This is one of our tools that we like to keep our members informed. That's one of our goals as a chamber. And we would like to invite everybody to our March membership meeting, which will also be a Zoom meeting, which will be on March 24th at 8 a.m.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, take care.